Okay, I think we are live. And because of how recent it was, I need to go ahead and delete all the things that I wrote on my Word document, my last class, and to get things set up fresh for you all. And also need to just kind of run out the clock just a little bit, maybe a minute or two here. If you happen to be watching this as a recording, I have to wait for the video to kind of post on YouTube so I can send a link for the people to watch live, which is ultimately the same link I know that you follow to see this archival video. But you'll have to wait for the web page to kind of catch up to us here. That generally takes about a minute, so just kind of deal with me here. Um, I appreciate your flexibility and your dedication to the class and watching this video. Looks like it is posted now, the link is, so let's go ahead and put that into Blackboard, and then we can go ahead and proceed with the actual course content for today. All right, broadcast link, exclamation point, because we're having fun. Please follow this to watch our broadcast. All right, and then send announcement of this immediately. And it should bring people to this video. Okay, email successfully sent. We can go ahead and go on to our class. And in words that I'm sure will just stay with you forever and cause you great disappointment, we won't be getting to everything that I'd hoped to accomplish on a classroom session, a general classroom session for today. On my original lesson plan that I had for Friday's class, or well, for Wednesday's class too, we would have a quiz today, and we'd also talk about the evidence that was turned in, and really kind of get a chat for how things were going in terms of researching this resolution. Unfortunately, this format doesn't really allow us to do that. Now, of course, if you have a pressing comment or question, do log in to Blackboard and or not Blackboard, I'm sorry, Google, and click that link and log. You can log in and ask me ask me something in the chat window. Do be aware that there is about a 45-second to maybe a minute delay. So you'll ask a question, and it will appear that I will move on to different things, but I will eventually see what you've asked, and I will go back to it. So again, do be aware. I see people coming in now, so as the viewer count comes up, I'll probably say this a whole bunch of times. But there is a bit of a delay. If you ask a question, I will get to it. It's just please remember that I'm a good 45 seconds to a minute. Well, actually, you're a good 45 seconds to a minute behind me. So again, if you ask a question, I'm not ignoring you. It's just the delay. So announcements for the beginning of class here. Again, today we're going to have a quiz, but we're not going to do that. We can't do that with this format that we have. So there will be a quiz over case construction on Monday. That's the content that we're going over today. And for Monday at the start of class, I would like you to have one negative card per person. So this is, again, negative of the same resolution that you've already done for your affirmative card that would have been due on Wednesday. We'll deal with handing all that stuff in on Monday when we're there in person. I can help you troubleshoot and stuff like that. We'll just worry about that when we actually meet face to face on Monday. Let's hope to goodness that we can. The sun is a shining, but the road conditions have not improved. I don't know if you've been outside recently or compared it to the morning, but it was brutal in the morning, and I didn't feel safe. I'm guessing that many of you who traveled wouldn't have felt safe. I looked at the school closings, and literally everything in Muncie seemed to be closed, except for Ball State. So, that's again because people can walk on campus. I understand that, but I have to make a decision that would be fair and safe for everybody. And even if that cheeses somebody off, I feel like this is the better call for today due to the weather. So, all right, I think I've gotten enough. There's enough people kind of filtering in now. Again, delay, 45 seconds to a minute. So if you ask a question, I will get to it. It's just you're a little bit behind me, and I will see your question and I'll answer it when I see it. Okay, so here's what we're talking about in today's class, and what we're talking about is case construction. What it is, what does it mean to have a case, and what should that case include? And also, what order should we construct that case in? So we're going to talk about all of that today. So just some general things about cases. I'm going to go ahead and title this here, nice in the middle there, get it separated from our announcements. I apologize for the lack of a proper audio visual for a YouTube video, but this is what we got. This is our whiteboard for today. So case construction. Crossfire debate is different. Here, I'm going to make sure we specify it's crossfire case construction because we'll be doing other kinds of debate too. Anyway, crossfire case construction is a bit different from other ones. In a lot of debates and in court and in law, you have this idea of what we call prima facie burden. And generally what this is that there is a certain minimal, not a cretin, no, certain minimum amount of information or argumentation that needs to be presented in order for things to proceed. So in court, you might have heard something called, if you're watching, Law and Order and stuff, they might call like a writ of habeas corpus. And what habeas corpus is a Latin expression meaning like having the body. In other words, if I'm going to put someone on trial for murder, then I better have a body to show the court and say, here's poor Fred. He's dead, as you can see, with a stab wound. And this guy over here with the bloody knife, he's the one that done did it. That's kind of what habeas corpus means. Now, the habeas corpus is just simply saying, here's Fred, here's a dead body. We need to figure out if this person's guilty or not. The whole deciding upon whether or not that other person with the knife actually did do the deed, that's what the trial's about. But before the trial can even get started, there has to be evidence of a crime actually taking place that needs to be presented then to the judge, to the jury. We actually see this all the time. One of the reasons why people go through a lot of steps to we're getting pretty morbid in here, I know. We'll get back to debate. Don't trust me. This is all about debate. But in murder trials and in mobs and mafia and things like that, they'll go through great efforts to hide bodies or to destroy bodies, because if somebody is simply missing, oftentimes judges will just dismiss a case for murder or kidnapping simply because there's no body that can be shown to the court and then evaluated. And that's why organized criminals hide bodies. It's not just to not get caught by the police, but even if they're strongly suspected of doing the deed, the fact that there isn't a body there is literally a legal term, habeas corpus. And debate has a similar idea. In certain times of debate, there are certain arguments that you have to have in your case in order for things to proceed. If they're not there, then your opponent basically says, my opponent didn't argue X idea. This debate's essentially over. They didn't fulfill their burden of prima facie. However, Crossfire doesn't have that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and delete the habeas corpus thing. That's just a fun. That's not a debate term. That's just a fun thing to give you the idea. So Crossfire is not like that. Crossfire is what we call discursive format for decision making, which means that really the only burden you have is that your arguments are, one, complete. That means they each have a claim, data, and warrant, and that, and two, they are reasons to support your side. They, in claims, aren't many arguments. A reason to support your side. That's it. You don't have to argue anything in particular. And your opponents likewise can't argue that because you neglected arguing something in particular, they get to win the debate automatically. They don't get that. There's nothing like that in crossfire debate. So it's basically the wild, wild west of debating. Crossfire is. You don't have to say anything in particular, and there's nothing really structuring what you're saying beyond what is good for a case. So what is a case then? A case is a prepared position that you can read from during your debate. So this is a full manuscript type thing. Okay, so even though the outline that we're going to go over today is an outline, you will want to write out every single word you're going to say for this this case. Now, an important thing to know is that cases only take up the first speech for your side during the debate, which for in our case is going to be 4 minutes. Okay, so there's only that much preparation. I mean, it is a full manuscript, but you're not writing out everything that's going to occur during that class period that you're debating. Okay, that's first of all, that's way too much work to do. Secondly, it would make a bad debate because you wouldn't be responding dynamically to what your opponents are saying, which under normal conditions, you wouldn't know what they're saying until you show up. Okay? You only know what you're going to say, or rather, you only know what you're going to enter into the debate during that first speech. Okay? Let's underline that. So cases only take up that first speech. All right, so this is really what we're talking about here. So we're kind of narrowing it down to what it is. So finally, the meat of what we're talking about today. What is a case? What things are included in it? How do we construct it? So there's a couple of notes here. Is that while we are going over this stuff in order in which it should appear in your document, we are not talking about it in the order in which you need to prepare it. You need to prepare this case. Cases are best prepared with the arguments first, and then filling in the rest. Okay. There's a couple of steps. There's actually a sequence we're going to go over. We're going to talk about what the case should look like, and then we'll go over the sequence in which it should occur. But I just, again, at the very front of this, I need you to know that you start with the arguments first, even though that's not going to be the first thing that we're going to talk about. And so, the first thing we're going to talk about is that your case needs to have an introduction, right? An introduction that serves a couple of functions. The first one is that it has an attention getter, something like a statistic or example or anecdote that, well, introduces the idea of your case, that introduces the idea behind your case, but also primarily builds interests, right? They want people to build interest. You want people to have interest in what your position is, right? So a good attention getter maybe for this topic on college athletics would be, saying something like, as I was researching this topic, I found that despite record attendance by Ball State students, our at college athletics programs were in debt by about $250,000 every year. That's not really true, by the way. At least I hope it's not. I'm just giving that to you as an example. But that would be like, oh wow, that's pretty shocking. That's pretty. I don't know. I think it's pretty interesting that we can have such high attendance and so little money lying around. What is this debate going to be about? And then part of that, after you have that little attention getter there, you answer that question that people are hopefully naturally wondering by declaring the resolution verbatim and your position on it. Okay, so then you would say something, yada yada, $250,000 in debt. That's why my partner and I are on the affirmative for the resolution. College athletics are a drain on school resources rather than adding resources to the school, or however we wrote it in class. It's preserved in Blackboard. But do you kind of see how that works there? Is that you kind of grab attention with some kind of interesting example or anecdote, and then you need to declare what the topic is and your position on it. Now, actually, in the example I just gave, I went in the order of, my partner and I are sitting in affirmation of, and then I read the resolution. Doesn't really matter internally how this is done, but this job here, let's go ahead and label these. This job here needs to be done. Right? So that first, that second, in your introduction. What comes next is you need to define key terms. If there's anything that you think is valuable to understanding what the resolution is, this is something. Yes, David, I can do that. I will definitely post these on Blackboard. And in fact, that's one reason why I'm doing it in Word today is because I can do that. I know I sometimes do that in regular class sessions as well, but definitely today we're going to post these up. Okay, where was I? Oh yeah, defining key terms. You need to define any key terms. So maybe college athletics is something that you need to define because you can envision somebody being a wily coyote and deciding that college athletics applies only to intramural teams and not to the big ticket items where people actually have to pay money to attend with the actual official sports team that travels around and all that jazz. So defining key terms, to limit the debate is around key topics important to your case. All right. That's basically what you're like. You don't want to get blindsided by somebody who's like, today we're only talking about intramural teams. You're like, no, wait a minute. I really feel like, anyone's normal. If we look it up in the dictionary, college athletics is actually a broader idea than that, according to Merriam-Webster. And then you would, claim data warrant that argument out. But you want to define key terms in your introduction so that people know what you're talking about. And after that, you want to preview your claims. Okay, read each claim. This is a list of each claim that you're going to go over. All right, you don't explain them. Just say, basically, you could literally say it like this. Today we're going to argue blah, 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 blah. Well, you wouldn't say blah, 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 but you just list out all your claims. And you can just introduce that idea by saying, today we're going to argue the yada, yada, yada. All right, and then finally, you will present something called a weighing mechanism. Now, in other academic experiences of quality, you might know this as a thesis statement. And this is where you explain to the audience how you will prove the resolution is true or false, depending on your position, and why they should vote for your side. Okay, so an example of a weighing mechanism for this topic might be something like, and I do recommend that you kind of start with the words if you agree. So if you agree that college athletics cost more money than they make, then you should also agree they drain our resources, and you should vote for the affirmative. All right. And that is, again, explicitly asking, as I was saying in class, asking for the sale or asking your audience exactly what you want them to do. Again, you want them to vote for you, and you want them to vote for you because you think you can prove that they cost more money, that college athletics programs cost more money than they'll bring in. Right? Just to kind of rephrase that a little during our example. So that way, it's very clear on what your debate's going to be really about. At least according to you, this debate's going to be about money, and the ways it costs and doesn't come back. After that, your introduction is complete, and you can then move on to your body, which is just your arguments, actually. So you would have, your first argument of a claim, you have data, don't forget citations, and then your warrant. And your warrants need to also, they in addition to kind of connecting to the claim, they also need to mention how this fits in with your weighing mechanism, thesis, dealy bobber. All right. So let's say my first claim is the college football stadiums cost too much money. My data is, according to the National College Athletics Association, on their website on today, the typical college football stadium costs $50 million to construct, but over a 25-year period, they only bring in $30 million in revenue. Then moving on to my warrant, I would say, as you can see, they cost almost half of what they bring in just a little bit more than half of what they cost over 25 years. This means that every time we invest in college athletics, it actually costs more money than they will make in a reasonable time period, which is why you should vote for us for the affirmative. Right? That would be my full warrant, and I know that seemed pretty wordy. We could probably make it just a little bit more elegant when we're writing things out and trying to make things sound efficient, but that's exactly the idea. Right? You don't just explain how it connects to the claim, you go beyond that a little bit and talk about how your claim or your evidence supports the weighing mechanism as well. Right? So that way everything's nice and tied up. Everything goes back, this goes into this, goes into this. My phone's on silent, but it's ringing like crazy on my desk. I apologize if you can hear that. And that's it for an argument in this case. Again, you don't have any burden of arguing anything in particular, just that you argue something complete and that it seems to be a reason to vote for your side. And that's it. Now, so, you go claim data warrant. Maybe again here. And then, wow, claim warrant data. Great job. And then, yeah, just keep going. But not really keeping going. See, here's the thing. And this is why I was so picky earlier when I was going over this stuff. Where did I write that down here? Cases only make up the first speech, which is 4 minutes. Typically, a typical argument in a debate will probably take you a minute to get through. So if you have only 4 minutes, and each one of these takes about a minute, then you only have 30 seconds for your introduction, and then 30 seconds for your conclusion, and then you're done, and then you're out of time. So it doesn't benefit you to prepare a huge amount of information. You want to sit down when we turn all these things in on Monday. Again, on Monday, it's going to be a special day. That's why there's a quiz, because we need to get in there and work together. Not just you and me, but also you and your partner need to work together. Because you're going to pick 2 to 3 of these. Sometimes you only pick 2 because one of them's pretty darn long. You don't have, so you want to pick the 3 that you think you could talk about the best, or maybe naturally feel are the strongest, and argue from those, because you don't have time to have 15, 16 of these things, even though we have that many available to us on the Google Drive once we turn all these in. There's not going to be enough time for all that. So you're only picking 2 or 3. It's not a lot. Yeah. And then, of course, after all these claims, we have our conclusion. And a conclusion is actually pretty short, maybe even the shortest part of the entire case. But you're just going to review your claims. Again, you don't have to explain them again. You're just kind of listing them out. And then, ask the audience, again, to vote for your side, referring to your weighing mechanism. All right, so again, you kind of ask for the sale. You say, all right, because of this, that, and the other idea that I presented today, again, I listed those out. Just imagine I did. We feel that college athletics cost more money than they bring in, which means we should agree with the resolution then that college athletics drain resources from school rather than adding to their resources. And then that's it. That's your conclusion. So maybe your conclusion's about 15 seconds. Your introduction is maybe 30 to 45 seconds. And then each argument's just about a minute. And that explains all the time that you have to prepare. So let's talk about the sequence in which these things should happen then. Because your introduction is pretty important, in that your weighing mechanism kind of has to tie to all of your arguments. You have to preview your claims, and you have to figure out which keys are important, which key terms are important. You're not going to know any of those three things here until you've already identified some arguments, or at the very least, some data that you've looked up about the topic. So actually, the way you write a case in sequence is you start here with the body. Okay, start there. That's step one. 111. You start here with the body. And then you can move on to thinking about, hey, I'm going to write this down here. It'll appear right on the notes on the blackboard. After the claims are written, ask yourself, is there anything that these have in common besides the fact that I think they're good? Oftentimes people, I'll ask them that in class and they'll say, well, I think that these are just some good arguments. Like, okay, but what reason underneath all of that, that impression that these are good arguments, why are they so good? What do they all have in common to you? And then you say, well, since the resolution talked about resources, and resources means money, and all these claims deal with how college athletics don't make money, I just felt they were good. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. And that would be your weighing mechanism. All right, so you start with your body. You identify some claims that you want. You write out the first stage of claim data warrant. And then you think about how are they going to fit together in getting someone to vote for my side? Why did my partner and I identify these arguments as good? Those kinds of questions. What do these ideas have in common? Why did I pick them? And that reason is your weighing mechanism or your thesis. And then after that, you can just fill in everything else. So the rest of the introduction is like 3. And conclusions like number 4, and don't forget to revisit your thesis, or rather your warrants, after you're done writing everything else, to make sure that your weighing mechanism is mentioned in the warrant, right? When you're done with basically the rest of it. I really wish I had chosen a different naming scheme for these instead of numbers. What I can foresee, when I taught my other section, the Word didn't actually do this. Automatically number everything. I was able to format it different. Can I make it letters? Yay! Okay. That'll eliminate some confusion, I think. All right, and that's basically, all right, that's probably fine. Right? There we go. That's basically it, folks. Does anyone have any questions about this material? Again, we will have a quiz on Monday over this stuff. So I'll ask you about the prima facie burden. I will definitely ask you about prima facie burden. What does that mean? I might even ask you a follow-up question, which will be a separate question, like, does Crossfire have one? The answer is no. Crossfire doesn't have this idea. So I will definitely ask you what sequence you should do things in. It's not going to be a complicated question. I'm just probably going to ask you where you should start when you construct a case with your partner. And again, the answer is in start with your arguments, or start in the body, or start with getting your claims, completed, something like that. You'll hopefully know the answer there. Again, the answer to the question is always going to be start with your arguments. Yeah, and that'll be kind of the quiz. I'll be breaking those ideas up into just 5 questions and ask you about them. Just going to kind of pause here and see if anyone's writing in chat. It doesn't seem like it. So I think that's all, folks. Thank you for your flexibility today. I really appreciate you being here. At one point, we had about 12 people in here, which means that it seems like almost everybody kind of attended, or well, a little over half the class attended. I hopefully and expect that the rest of you will watch the video at a time of your convenience. And you can always ask me questions over email. I am not traveling for a debate this weekend, so I'll actually be able to answer emails over the weekend. So if you have any questions there, please go ahead and ask. Again, I'm kind of rambling here looking at chat. No one's writing questions there, so I guess we're done today. I want to thank you again for your flexibility. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching the lesson today. I hope that you stay indoors. I'm looking outside again. It's looking just as mean and nasty as it did before, only now it's sunny, so I guess that's an improvement. But have a great Friday and stay safe.